Good afternoon, and welcome to the Nantucket Civic League's forum, SEALS, Humans Finding a Balance. I'm Alan Reinhardt. I'm president of the Nantucket Civic League, and it's my pleasure to welcome you this afternoon to our Civic League forum. The Nantucket Civic League was founded in 1903, and over the years, the Nantucket Civic League has been very much involved with improving, that's not the right word, with the quality of life on Nantucket. And we reach that goal, we try to reach that goal by sponsoring these forums. Throughout the winter months, we normally do 4 or 5 different forums on topics that are of interest to the community at large. The Civic League is the umbrella organization for the 23 area associations that cover Nantucket from one end of the island to the other. As a member of your local area association, you are automatically a member of the Nantucket Civic League. So if you're not a member of your local association, I strongly encourage you to become a member of the local area association. The intention or the reason that the Civic League exists is to preserve the island's resources, to improve the quality of island living, and to educate the public on island issues. Today's forum was created and sponsored by the Nantucket Civic League to inform the community at large about an issue that is become increasingly important to the island of Nantucket. It's my pleasure to introduce Dr. Sarah Oaktie, who will moderate the program this afternoon. Many of you probably know Dr. Oaktie. She is the director of the UMass Field Station, among many other hats that she wears in town. She's also a former president of the Nantucket Civic League and currently sits as the vice president of the Civic League. So without further ado, Sarah.
Thank you, everybody, for showing up. Appreciate it, Alan. All right. It's great to see such a nice big crowd. This is an important topic for many people here on Nantucket. We've got an esteemed group of people here that represent a wide variety of views, and I think that everyone that's here will be interested in what they have to say. We're trying to make sure that we have a non-biased, open discussion. We're going to give equal time to both sides. I'm going to introduce everyone here in a moment. And throughout the presentations that they give, be thinking about questions you have or concerns or issues. We always do our forums the same way, whether it's meet the candidates or meet the articles or erosion or windmills or seals. And today, we're not going to change it. We're going to have cards that they'll be handed out, blank 4x6 cards. We've got 2 or 3 volunteers on each side, so if you raise your hand, if you have a question, we'll give you a card and a pen or pencil, and you can write your question down on that piece of paper. It's going to be passed up to me, and I'm going to address it to the panel. If you have one side or another that you'd like to address it to, certainly put that information on there. You can put your name on or you can leave it off. I'm not going to read your name, so you'll be able to ask these questions without having to say who you are. Other than that, I can't think of anything else. Let's make sure to keep it civil, respect each other's opinions. There's a lot of smart, kind, concerned, passionate, and important people of all types here. So I'm really excited that we're all here to talk about this. And let me go ahead and start introducing some of the folks here up on the panel in case you don't know. Representing the Seal Abatement Coalition, and their website is www.sealabatement.com. We have one of the presidents and founding members, Peter Krogh, right here. He is also a dean and distinguished professor emeritus of the Walsh School of Foreign Service of Georgetown University. And he's been talking to folks here on the island and leading the charge with a couple of other folks that are avid fishermen that really enjoy using Great Point and consider Nantucket an important part of their lives and their home. We also have Peter Howell. You might recognize Peter. He's sitting right next to Peter. So Pete and Peter. Peter is a founding Pete and Repeat, is a founding member of the Seal Abatement Coalition, a recreational fisherman, as well as someone who helps me and Steve Nicole and many of us out here in doing the spring cleanup for the trustees of the reservation. I think you're still on their board and help them in many different ways. And you're a resident, and he's always been active in this field and is also an avid fisherman who cares about the striper fishing and has done a lot for the island in maintaining our fishery. And last but not least, everybody knows Tom Lesko. He helped me with the original harbor plan committee, has a lot of experience in Matticat and is a charter boat fisherman of not some large but perfect renown, and has been here on island how long? Since 1970, yep. So obviously, Tom knows a lot about fishing. He knows a lot about water quality. He's been a good servant to the water quality groups here on island and cares about our habitat and environment. And he also is here today. On my right, I have an old friend, Solange Brohl, Dr. Brohl, who's with UMass Boston, and she has been doing seal research with graduate students and undergrads for many years. One of the first people that, Solange is one of the first people I met at UMass Boston. She does population studies and conservation ecology. So she looks at a variety of marine mammal ecology and conservation efforts and has worked throughout the last several, almost decade and a half, 2 decades, on the seal population and looking at some of their diets. And is one of many different researchers that has worked throughout the field station and with a variety of interest here on island from tons of different universities. Next to her is Michael Jasny, and he's the director of the Marine Mammal Protection Project and a senior policy analyst at the Natural Resources Defense Council. He's a leading expert in law and policy of ocean noise pollution and has worked domestically and internationally in the law and policy of ocean noise, and has done a lot of speaking both at legislative level, local, regional level about topics that are extremely important for marine mammal protection, policy development, science-based management, and things like that. And I think he'll have a really good perspective. Last but not least, we have Sharon Young, who's the Marine Issues Director for the Humane Society of the U.S., specializing in protecting marine mammals and other marine life in the United States. She has worked all over the country in a variety of different capacities, looking at marine mammals and fisheries, has some knowledge of lethal predator control marine mammals and other human-related causes of death and injury of marine mammals in the U.S. She also advises on human impacts to sharks and marine turtles, and she's a member of the Society for Marine Mammalogy and on the board of directors of the Right Whale Consortium. Come on down, there's room in front. Please make sure to raise your hand if you'd like a 4x6 or 3x5 card. We've got pens and pencils. I'm going to go back and forth on each side of the podium here and try to make sure to give equal time to all the folks that are up here. So, Peter, you're up first.
Thank you, Sarah. And thank you for convening this forum, which bears on the quality of life on Nantucket Island. So it is a perfect topic for the Civic League, whose purposes were described by Alan. And SAC also wishes to express its appreciation for being included in the forum. Our plan here on the SAC side is I will briefly describe the SAC, how it's organized and what it does. Pete Howell will then go over briefly our principal talking points, and Tom Lesko will speak to his personal experience on the waters surrounding this magical island. We've left a couple of flyers on the table at the entranceway there, one of which provides basic information on the Seal Abatement Coalition, and the other of which identifies frequently asked questions and answers to those questions. I would like to emphasize that this document is a work in progress and will doubtless be finely tuned following this forum and the meeting with our experts to my right. The SAC was founded a couple of years ago by a group of concerned individuals from varied backgrounds, concerned about what they felt were and observed to be, in some cases, the multiple negative impacts of a burgeoning gray seal population on this island, and indeed on the Cape Islands. The group is diverse in composition, and its views on what should be done are equally diverse. But the SAC as an organization hews to moderation while it seeks to speak with a single voice. The SAC has incorporated and filed for tax-exempt status as a 501c4 corporation. Its officers, in addition to myself, are Guy Snowden, who's vice president, and Big Kenny Casson, over here on the left, who is our redoubtable secretary treasurer. In addition, we have two members of our board, Pete Howell, who will be speaking in a moment, and also Crocker Snow, who owns 2/3 of Muskegon Island. We have engaged the counsel of an international environmental lawyer and also the counsel of a legislative advisor and the services of an administrative assistant and a research associate. The SAC basically proceeds on two tracks. One track is to serve as whistleblowers for the public benefit. We believe the exploding gray seal population poses both real and potential threats to recreational and commercial fishing, to beachgoers, swimmers, and surfers, to the economy, to the environment, and to public health and safety. We believe these issues should be brought to the public's attention. We endeavor to do so, and we appreciate the opportunity to be a part of this forum, which is doing exactly that. In this connection, we have circulated a petition calling attention to the gray seal problem and seeking relief from it. To date, we have about 1,500 signers of that petition, mostly from Nantucket, but also from Cape Cod, principally in the Orleans-Chatham area, and a lot of them out of the Goose Hummock tackle shop there. We also work with reporters and freelance journalists who are covering the seal story. Most prominently recently, Doug Fraser of the Cape Cod Times, who is here this afternoon. At the same time, not enough is known about these real and potential impacts. Accordingly, the SAC pursues a track that encourages and facilitates research in these areas. In order to do so, the SAC has established within the Community Foundation for Nantucket, whose executive director is here this afternoon, a gray seal research fund, which receives tax-exempt contributions that will be used to help fund the SAC research agenda. While the SAC supports research, it also believes that there is a time urgency to the needed research. The impacts of the burgeoning gray seal population cannot simply be studied ad infinitum. Results are needed and actions taken to lessen the impacts where they are found to be deleterious. The SAC's research mission has been endorsed by the Nantucket Chamber of Commerce, by the commissioners of the Land Bank, by the Nantucket Harbor and Shellfish Board, Advisory Board, and the Wauwinet Landowners Association. The SAC is in touch with the Cape Cod Commercial Hook Fishermen's Association in Chatham in order to follow their approach to the problem. And we have contacts at the Woods Hole Oceanographic Institution with whom we are discussing the pursuit of our research agenda. The most common question posed to the SAC is, what should be done? Our answer is that we do not know. We do not want to get ahead of ourselves. We simply want to follow the facts and see where they lead. We are hoping that this SEAL Forum will help generate some of the facts we feel are needed in order to accurately, constructively, and effectively chart our future course. Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you. Well said. All right, we'll next progress on to Dr. Brohl. She has a brief PowerPoint. Everyone's been good about staying on time.
Well, while this is being figured out, I want to thank the Civic League for inviting me to talk. Yes. So I have a few slides. I want to talk about the growth of the gray seal population here, but also more globally on the east coast of U.S. and Canada. So this is a population that was used to be quite common in this coastal area that was based on archaeological and historical records. So this is a population that was extirpated by the 17 or 1800s. So it was used to be a common species here and was extirpated through hunting. And a very similar thing happened in Canada. So this first slide shows the eastern seaboard. Of course, being Canadian, I have to, sort of show all of the extent of Canada as well. And Canada really is the problem, really. So we have really the extent of the range of the gray seals on this coast, on this side of the Atlantic, from the Gulf of St. Lawrence at the upper right through Nova Scotia, especially Sable Island, and a small area of Maine, Green Island, and Seal Island, and finally the area around Muskeget and Cape Hen Islands. Can I have the next slide? So just to give you a perspective, in Canada, by the 1960s, there was a very small population remaining of gray seals in Canada on the eastern seaboard. And this is a plot of the population increase on Sable Island. So this is really the largest breeding population that exists on this side of the Atlantic. And it started from the 1960s with a few hundred individuals. And by 2010, that's the number of pups born annually. It was about 62,000 individual pups born on Sable. I think the next step, okay, so at first the growth was 12% per year, 13% per year. So if you're into investments, this is a pretty good return on your investment. So this is also the largest possible growth rate for these animals biologically. Okay, that's as fast as the population can grow. The other line shows us, the other arrow shows us, can you click, yes. Since 2004, there's been still an increase, but now it's a 7% instead of 12.8%. So there's been a decrease in the rate of increase and in basically our interest rate for the number of pups born on Sable Island. Now, thank you. Next slide. So, but now we want to know about Muskeget. So Muskegon started actually in the started a little before 1990. It's just a few pups, and then it's been increasing the number of pups born annually. And we have the last number we have is in 2008, and it's a little over 2,000 pups being born on the island. Yes. Okay, so I'm sorry for the complex plot. It's just saying that the actual pup count is between this line of 50% increase and 30% increase per year. Now, that tells us that this increase is, this 12% increase is the biologically the maximum rate of increase for this population, for this species. So this increase, is a remarkable increase, is really fueled by immigration from the Canadian populations, and that would not be possible or feasible without constant immigration on a yearly basis by females coming to give birth on Muskegon, but coming from the Canadian population. From this perspective, any kind of reduction in population here would not stop the influx of individuals to the population. Next slide, please. So now keep clicking for a few. Yes. So once again. Okay. So now I'm giving you the whole picture. So here we are, Muskegon, 2,100 in 2008. Green Seal Island, just a few. Sable Island, 62% now at 2010. A few thousand more on Nova Scotia and 14,000 on the Gulf of St. Lawrence. So this is really what we're dealing with, a very large population in Canada that is streaming into our part of the world. Yes. Now, you are quite familiar with population increase. Nantucket human population has been increasing tremendously, and that's the year-round population, tremendously. This is from the Census Bureau, and we know that there's been a tremendous increase at during some decades, and also an increase every summer. So the notion of limited carrying capacity is something that I think is very close to heart to people on Nantucket, and I absolutely realize that. So I think it's the issue of carrying capacity is a real question from the people on the island. What is the carrying capacity? So what I want to talk about very briefly is the information that we have. We don't have on the number of seals that are using the area apart from pupping. And so this is work in progress, and it's based on counts from many thousands of aerial photos of these pups, these seals taken in the winter March area, which is when they haul out because they are molting. So that's the reason why there's so many of them at that time of the year. We see so many is because they have to get out. And so, can I go to the next slide? So this shows basically the results from some of these areas. So we see that at Monomoy, there's been a change over time from harbor seals to gray seals. A very fast increase in the gray seals that are hauled out in Monomoy. We have large scale. And compared to the Cape Cod Bay side, where we have very few of gray seals, and we still have a very, very good large population of harbors. So it depends very much of where you are, and more locally, there is a large number of gray seals. Next slide. Now, what do they eat? That's still a question that is difficult. This is the result of, you probably know the result of this, this PhD dissertation by Christina Impella. And she based her data on whole light site scats. So these are collected and remnants of various prey are found and identified. There are large problems due to this method, and so it's very hard to figure out. So this is the idea of a very large range of species, but based on scats means that this is in the last 24 to 48 hours of picking up this sample. So we don't know the long range, the long-term information about what they eat, and it's important because, can you have this next slide? Yes, another click. So Stephanie is a gray seal that was satellite tagged in Maine in 2005. And what I want to show you here is that this is a pup. She was 3 months old. She left Maine, and she went foraging at the edge of the continental shelf here, and spent several days, several weeks actually, just at sea. And then visited Cape Cod, and returned off to sea. So there are seals that feed locally, but many of them actually show up hauled out here, but actually feed in a very large range. Basically, this is their backyard. It's very different from what we could imagine. So their idea of their range feeding range is very different from what we had thought. This is a very large range. Can I have the next slide, please? This is a compound picture of seals that were tagged on Sable Island. Something like 40 seals that were tagged, and following their movements. And so all the points here are fixes from the satellite tags. And you can see that they were tagged on Sable Island. They went all the way, some of them went all the way in the Gulf, and pretty much avoiding the Gulf of Maine and going straight basically straight line to this area. So following the shelf edge and sort of visiting Nantucket while they're at the shelf edge and coming back. So this is really the perspective of gray seals when they are foraging. They haul out locally, but they may not necessarily feed locally. So when we talk about potential carrying capacity, it's a very difficult thing to quantify, but also the population increases, the rate of population increases tell us that they are very far from carrying capacity. I think this is my last slide. Okay, so you can. This is for questions. Okay, that's enough. Yes, that's it. So we'll come back to the idea of calls. Yes.
Okay,
thank you.
Excellent. Thank you. Already got a good question. Hopefully you all are writing some more good questions out there. Now I'm going to throw it back over to Pete Howe.
I was afraid Solange was going to cut into my time.
I was watching her. Yes, she was like a shark.
I want to thank the Civic League also, and you, Sarah, for organizing this forum. And I want to commend the designer of the advertisement for this forum, which appeared in last Thursday's Inquirer and Mirror. It described the issue as you said, finding balance between seals and humans. That is an appropriate way to pose the issue before us today. However, I believe it is inappropriate to describe this forum as it was described in the INM's island calendar. That notice announced, and I'm quoting, panelists from the pro-environmentalist and seal abatement positions will square off in this forum. I think that misrepresents what we're trying to do this afternoon. That description implies that this is an adversarial debate between those who are for the SEALs and those who are against them, between those who are pro-environmentalist and those who, by implication, are not. I, for one, certainly regard myself as an environmentalist, and I think my affiliations will testify to that. So I would say to you that framing the debate as pro versus con, those for versus those against the SEALs, would produce a contrived and phony debate. In short, we did not come here to square off. We came here essentially just to ask some questions, or more precisely, to ask you and our co-panelists if the questions we are posing make sense. We admit we don't have the answers, but we believe the questions are valid and should be brought to the attention of this community. Now, before we get to the questions, let me make one assertion on which I expect we can all agree. Insofar as gray seals in our waters are concerned, the Marine Mammal Protection Act has arguably been a demonstrable success. The seals are back, and I acknowledge and I even applaud that. But, and here's question number one, how do we determine success in the context of the Marine Mammal Protection Act? When does success tip over into excess? Keep in mind, thanks in part to the legislation, there are now, to the best of my knowledge, virtually no discernible constraints on gray seal population growth in our waters. And perhaps that is question number two. Are there any current effective constraints on the growth of the gray seal population? The Marine Mammal Protection Act stipulates, and I trust my co-panelists on the other side who know more about the Act than I do will correct me. The Act stipulates certain goals, parameters, and criteria for determining success. Among them, the optimum sustainable population of gray seals. The optimum sustainable population. But how do we, and this is question number three, how does the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration know what that number is and when the actual seal population has reached an optimum sustainable population? And while we wait for that determination, here's question number four. What are the implications of the growing seal population for our environment, our public health and safety, and our fishing and tourist-based industry? We believe research into these and related questions is warranted, and we seek your support for such research. That concludes my statement.
Thank you, Pete. For part of your time, would you like some of these guys to try to answer one or two or three? Those are great questions, and I think they're important to all.
That's why we're here.
Sharon, do you want to try to answer one of those? I wrote down all three of them. We've already had one question from the audience that actually mimics this, and that's an important one.
I can't address the issue of optimum sustainable population. That actually is defined, and it is a formula that is based on maximum productivity approaching carrying capacity. So in the slide that Solange showed, you could see the reproductive rate going like this. What happens when you get to optimum sustainable population based on the formula that is that is enacted, it's an actual formula, what happens is you start seeing a leveling off of that growth curve. You also saw on Sable Island, for example, it went from around 13% to 7%. It's starting to level off a little bit. That may be an indication of animals approaching what's called optimum sustainable. It just simply can't sustain maximum growth anymore. So optimum sustainable is where you're starting to see a leveling off as an animal begins to approach a carrying capacity. It is not carrying capacity, it's before carrying capacity. Carrying capacity, you start seeing a flattening and then a sine wave as the population rises and falls with resource availability.
Nice, that's a good one.
It is defined.
May I?
Sure.
What I was trying to pose, as I understand it, and I defer to you, it's an equation. We have an optimum sustainable population, which is one of the goals, I guess, or criteria at least, in the Act. But on the other side, we have the actual population. How do we know when the two, or where they are, one in relation to the other, when we don't have the data?
Well, we do need to know more, and Solange maybe can address how we're looking at trying to define populations, but with the fluid population that she described, you may not have a resident population such that you can say, in the U.S., this is optimum sustainable population because you have an open system with animals going back and forth. So what is optimum, in a sense, is more of a Gulf-wide optimum rather than a Muskegon Island optimum. There's no, in a species, there's no way to define a localized optimum when you have an open system.
We've got people with their hands up that need cards, so make sure Civic League volunteers, just put your hand up and they'll bring you a card. I'm going to switch here to Michael, but in between then, they'll bring you a card and then you'll bring the cards up to here. I think all of Pete's questions are important and I'm going to intersperse them throughout the presentation, but here's another way to word it, which is a question given to me. If the gray seals are protected in perpetuity, won't they eventually take over our beaches? If that's not so, what will stop their numbers from increasing exponentially? And I think this does lead to some of the things that you guys were referring to, is what happens to a population to slow it down? What are the factors? And earlier Solange said that 12.8 biologically was as fast as that population could grow in Sable Island. Maybe you can speak to that.
So an example of this, I think Sharon was talking about this change in growth rate on Sable Island, and this is an indication that the population is getting closer to carrying capacity. And one of the information that people were able to find was that it's the young females that start producing young later in life. So instead of producing young at age 3 or 4, now it's 5 and 6. And so the production rate is actually going down. There's a potential indication that pup mortality is higher as well. So this is an indication of this population reaching possibly food carrying capacity in their habitat, their environment. So that we can say about the Sable Island population. Here it's more complex because we have both a local population that is being established as well as this continued sort of influx of immigrants. And so it complicates the problem, but certainly there doesn't seem to be a large, like a slowdown of the growth rate as we've seen on Sable. So, yeah.
Increase of population is females coming down from Sable Island looking for more food and resources, males and space and.
It could well be
Summer
that this lowered carrying capacity, this reaching carrying capacity on Sable actually brings some individuals down here. Yeah. So it's still an open question, but it's a good possibility, yes.
Excellent. We're going to go ahead and move to Michael's talk, and I'll be keeping you to no more than 8 minutes. So I want to make sure to get as many questions in, and then we're going to go to Tom and then Sharon.
Okay, great. And I'd like to thank the Civic League as well for hosting this event. This has been great so far. First slide. What I'm going to do is switch gears a little bit and talk about the Marine Mammal Protection Act from a legal perspective. And in particular, after just discussing what the MMPA is and how it's structured, how it came to be, I want to talk about some of the restrictions and actions that could be taken to address the issue of seal interactions with property and fisheries and so on, and also talk about the opportunities that exist within the MMPA as it exists to address those issues. And in particular, I think this is borne about by wanting to respond to one of the questions that's raised and answered in the fact sheet, where the question asked is what can be done, and the response is right now simply nothing. I do think that there are things that can be done that can achieve the kind of balance that Pete was, Repeat was talking about a moment ago. So the Marine Mammal Protection Act, it was passed in 1972, really a landmark piece of legislation. Right in the preamble, it recognizes the great international significance from multiple perspectives of marine mammals in their role within a functional ecosystem. And the science since then has just told us more and more about the ecosystem services, the benefits that marine mammals give back to the ecosystems of which they're a part. The MMPA remains the world's preeminent legislation directed at marine mammal protection. And really it presents a comprehensive management system going all the way from data acquisition, data reporting on a population basis, all the way to environmental assessments and mitigation, monitoring efforts around activities that take place that can affect marine mammals, to enforcement. And it's effective. The data that have to be acquired and the reporting that's done on a population by population basis is really unparalleled anywhere, I think, on the planet for marine mammals. More and more activities are coming in from the cold and are going through an environmental compliance process into the MMPA that has a real benefit for species and populations. And finally, if you look at the conservation status of marine mammals off the U.S. Compared with the conservation status of marine mammals in other jurisdictions, you can see, next slide, that there's been a significant benefit to marine mammals through the 40 years of MMPA protection, where there's just fewer species indicated as of least concern, fewer that are considered near threatened, fewer that are considered vulnerable under international criteria. Next slide. So the Marine Mammal Protection Act has two objectives in the management of marine mammals, and really these are stated along two very different lines, one pertaining to populations, the other pertaining to individuals. For populations, and we've talked about this a little bit, the objective is to maintain marine mammal stocks at their optimal sustainable population. And really gray seals appear to fall in the vast majority of marine mammals in this respect, right in the middle. It's not considered depleted. So it's not at a point where it is losing individual members to the point where OSP is unattainable. On the other hand, it does not seem to be at carrying capacity. The second objective is to protect individual marine mammals from harm by establishing a prohibition on marine mammal take. And take is defined in a way that includes not only mortality and injury, but also harassment. Harassment is defined in part as any potential disruption of a biologically important activity such as pupping or sheltering. So what I want to do right now is explain how these objectives and limitations apply to gray seals on Nantucket. Next slide. To do this, I think that it is useful to separate the issue for Nantucket into several parts, into the different elements of interaction. I've also put in a little box over there, which isn't a form of interaction, but it's a potential management scheme, general call. And I've just put it out there on the periphery because it's not really a part of the MMPA, and I don't think it can be justified under the MMPA. Next slide. very quickly on a general cull as a kind of a management method, the MMPA bars all intentional take, except as specified under the Act, and I'll get to that in a moment, because some of that I think would be useful in managing this situation, but not a call. There's no regulatory mechanism for it. To impose it on gray wheels would really be unprecedented within the statutory framework of the MMPA. It would require amendment, and it's something that I can tell you that the ENGO, environmental NGO community would be very strenuously opposed to, and we think that there would be national public opposition to it as well. And you don't need to look too much further than the I think real opprobrium that followed YouTube videos of seals being, or rather sea lions being harassed around a pool in La Jolla, to see that active culling of gray seals would raise a similar, I think, public outrage. But again, fortunately, I think there are other methods to deal with this under the Act. Next slide. So first, I want to just talk very briefly about beach interaction. The important thing to know is that the MMPA, this is Section 101A4, allows use of deterrents to prevent property damage. Now, there are limitations here. As far as private property is concerned in particular, I don't think that a haul out of seals on land would constitute damage to property in and of itself. And like I said, I think there would be a particular problem in trying to use this to manage impacts on private property. But there are methods available for public property. Under Section 109H, there's an exception for public officials to protect the marine mammal and/or public safety. That's intended to apply to emergency situations. However, there is an exception to address nuisance animals. That may not apply to haul-outs, which would rule out dispersal, but would potentially allow public officials to use non-harassing methods of deterrent. So for an example of that would be a rope system and seasonal closures that were devised to protect seals in public in that beach in La Jolla. And I should say about La Jolla that the presence of these ropes for safety and the knowledge that's been generated of the seal's presence by this controversy has generated significant tourism interest. Next slide. And let me skip over to recreational fisheries, and this will be my last slide. Recreational fisheries are not subject to sector-specific management for bycatch, which is to say, unlike commercial fisheries, you can have such things being created like take reduction teams, which can be useful not only for reducing bycatch, but also for reducing interactions of, say, seals with fisheries. Wouldn't be applicable here because gray seals aren't considered strategic under the MMPA. However, that same provision I alluded to earlier, 101A4, it does allow for the use of deterrent methods to protect gear and catch. It's important to note that NIMS hasn't issued regulations for this. They did propose a rule quite some years ago that they haven't followed to fruition, but they have produced guidance for Pacific seals and sea lions, which they appear to be implementing. Now, this isn't a case of one size fits all. You really have to do some studying to see what method is going to be most effective for this population in this area. And because take reduction teams aren't available, I think that has to come through a kind of public initiative. But that's where I would recommend that some real study and research be directed in order to come up with management schemes, which could be deterrents, it could be gear modifications. There's a whole range of things that have been tried in various places here and internationally too. And like I said, I think there's opportunity under the MMPA to allow for a lot of management options. Thanks.
Thank you. Excellent. I'm going to see if there's another question that Pete had proposed in his short section here. Basically, your third question was, how does NOAA know what the numbers are and when actual population is going to reach the optimum. And we said basically they don't. Is NOAA still collecting? This kind of reflects a question I also have in my hand, which I think is quite good, which says if there's a problem with the number of seals, economy, health, safety, why is there no authoritative info available? Who is responsible for providing said info? What can the residents of Nantucket do to make this information forthcoming? So it's kind of a two-sided. Is this something where we should, as residents of Nantucket, be petitioning NOAA for additional information, research? How do we know, how can we have answers for what is a problem or what constitutes a problem, or at what time we would take any of these series of actions if they were so allowed?
Well, the National Marine Fisheries Service is ultimately responsible for collecting data on population abundance. I'm actually a member of the Atlantic Scientific Review Group that reviews all of the National Marine Fisheries Service stock assessments for marine mammals on the East Coast. But right now, you may know from all the headlines that the government is extremely straitened in terms of the funding that's available, and they tend to put their money where the greatest either squeaky wheel is or greatest need. So if you've got a population that is in dire straits, they're more likely to want to focus attention on that than one that's considered robust and growing. But certainly they're very responsive to information that they're getting from constituents and from folks that they like to pay attention to in Congress and other agencies as well. So I would say, trying to help answer some of the questions that exist about where the seals are coming from would be important, because, for example, if you're looking for a management solution and you've got a population that's just going to keep coming, and it's kind of like squirrels on the bird feeder. You can get rid of 4 of them, but then 4 more come. Well, then you haven't solved anything by getting rid of those 4. So the kinds of research that Solange was showing you with some of the satellite tracking, which I know NOAA is working on, is going to help answer some of the questions about where they're going and where they're coming from. Additional survey effort will indicate how many numbers, what the numbers are in different areas. But again, as Solange said, you may end up with a carrying capacity in one localized area. That population will stop increasing, but another area may have more habitat and they will continue to increase. But government research, government-funded research is largely how that happens.
Thank you. I'm going to go to you, Tom, for your comments and questions, to bring it to a local knowledge. And then after Tom, I'll give you a little bit of time, and then I've already got 8 questions, which are all good, and hopefully we'll have a few more. Go ahead.
Good afternoon. I'm Tom Olesko, and I'm happy to be here. Thank you for including me. I just want to share with you some of the observations that I've had fishing the water over the past 40 years. We have fantastic fishing here. Typically, though, looking back 30 years ago in the 70s, 80s, our routine would be we'd pick our clients up, in public land in Mattocket. Within 10 minutes, we'd be fishing in the opening and have a great chance of getting bass, having fish, and we spend the next 4 hours between the Smith Point and the end of Muskeget. Day in and day out, May, June, July, August, and September, October. And it was one of the great bass fisheries, I think, of the East Coast. And clients loved it because there was very little travel time and a lot of fishing time. It was terrific. About 10 years ago, early 2000s, things started to change. We noticed that previously that we saw virtually no seals. We saw a few seals in May, a few seals in October, November, but in the summer the water we felt was too warm. Seals were gone, and it was we had the water to ourselves and the fish. About 10 years ago, as we saw on your slide, the things started to change. We noticed the seals were staying around the whole summer, and we end up at an edge over by Muskeget, one of our favorite edges, many of them, and we'd have company. We'd have a few seals around. The seals would be, I'm not sure the seals eat striped bass. I've never really seen, if they could catch them, they probably would, but striped bass don't like to be chased, and I think that as they were being chased, they sort of, exited the area. And if I look at my log over the past 10 years, I think certainly the last 5 years, I can count in one hand the number of bass I've caught in the Muskeget area. And it's virtually impossible now to go over in that area and not have 4, 5, 6, 10, 15, 20 seals pop up in the area, and curious in a way, but also making it tough for a fish to be there. So about 10 years ago, we started to go a little further, and over towards Wasquee and the Vineyard, and out towards Great Point, and we had good fishing, but that too has changed. Wasquee is another area where it's full of seals, and that water was shut down quite rapidly, as Great Point has also. And now we head out towards Great Round Shoal, or Rosencrown, and places like that for very good fishing. But it's when we started, we had a 15-minute run to the Smith Point, and now we have an hour and a half. And it makes for economically, for enjoyment of the clients, it's a real change. Fishing's still good. There's just less fishing time, more travel time. I think that the observations that we're having, the last thing I want to share is that the last few years on the South Shore, we spent a little time blue fishing, quite a bit of time blue fishing actually, in July and August, and it's a terrific fishery. But we fish anywhere from a quarter mile to 2 to 3 miles off the airport, as many of you do, and we've had some evidence of seals. We've actually had a local seal follow us the last couple of years, one hiding out under the boat, taking seals off the line. So there, I guess there's not many places we can go without having the gray seal show up. So, and it's an observation. It's certainly changed our business and made it more difficult. But that's just, we have.
Thank you. I'm actually going to ask a couple of questions from the audience that kind of follow up on your comments to try to keep some of these questions about commercial and recreational fishing to the fore, and then I'll go back to you, Sharon. But this was a question for you all. What threat do you perceive gray seals pose to recreational and commercial fishing? As far as specifically, do you think it's competition, scaring away the fish? Could you elaborate? And then I have another question from a commercial fisherman that I'll pose, just to get that, because I think that's the crux of one of the matters is, fishing and the economy.
I think, the other change we've had in the last 10 years, we've started to fish up in the shallow water up off the flats, which you've a lot of heard of north of Tuckanuck. And we have had that. It's a wonderful fishery, but recently the seals have gotten up on Tuckanuck, and it's been tougher and tougher up there also. So I think the seals virtually have shut down the fishing on the west end of the island. And and I think it's as less. I don't have a sense that they're eating fish. I mean, they'll certainly take fish off the line, but I have a sense they're chasing the fish. I have a sense, their presence is such that the fish just aren't. The fish have changed their areas of feeding also. And as far as safety, I think there is. I now instruct my strikers when they land a fish, either in the West End, if we have lucky to get one, or down off the airport, or anywhere really, old man, they have to look first, because many times these seals will come up, grab the fish right out of your hand as you're landing it. We've had a seal come within less than a foot coming out of the water and just snag the fish right off the line, and it's it can be dangerous, obviously, from a bite or from a hook, taking a hook in your hand, the seal's hand. So that's certainly a dangerous thing for us. And this is again recreational fishing.
Right. And that's what's one of the important things for scientists to try to figure out ways to meet in the middle, is what kind of impact you're having, and then what can be done with or around or through or with gray seals to alleviate those impacts. And that's why these specific behavioral questions are so important. I have one other question.
Sarah, let me, if I could join in the answer to that. What's really meeting in the middle is the surf casters and the seals. The surf casters get hooked up, and the seals come in and take their fish. And this is happening on a regular basis now. And it is driving fishermen off this island, particularly in the shoulder seasons, when they used to come over here in great numbers to join us in surf casting. And those numbers have thinned out very, very appreciably, because people aren't going to spend the kind of money it takes to come over here to fish for a couple of weeks and have their fish stripped from them and their gear stripped from them. And this is a real event on this island, and it's increasing in intensity.
Thank you. I'm going to turn it back to Sharon, and then after her presentation, I'm going to go through some of these questions, and we'll get through as many as we can. You've got 7-8 minutes for your presentation, and then I want to have at least 20 minutes or so for questions. And we're going to continue some of the questions over food, but I'm going to try to extend this at least until 6 o'clock, if not a few minutes later.
Thank you. I want to just briefly add to a couple points about why I'm answering so many questions. I do work for the Humane Society, and I think people think of us with dogs and cats, but I'm a marine specialist. I'm a former marine mammal researcher, and I'm appointed by the federal government to a variety of different task forces. I'm a 6-year member of the Working Group on Marine Mammal Unusual Mortality Events. It looks at the causes of strandings and disease. I'm on 2 different task forces dealing with seal and sea lion interactions with fisheries, one on the East Coast, one on the West Coast. And as I said, I review National Marine Fisheries Service stock assessments along with other scientists.
So small. But as Matt said, it's 2 separate issues. I mean, one issue is the people who might be jumping the line in order, but the second issue is why can't we define under what circumstances you can refuse a fare and have it be a separate regulation? Cabs are allowed to refuse fares under these circumstances, that they feel threatened or the customer is inebriated or whatever, and not try to, maybe it's by trying to mix them that we've created the problem.
Ken, do you have a thought on this yourself?
We want to move
If you
the
go to
people.
100 yards, would it make a difference, or what?
50 feet of the taxi stand? That's still a good distance from the taxi stand. Too short.
Too short, so we're negotiating.
I think a lot of the way to fix this is to put a taxi stand in front of the chicken box, and then when the cabs are parked there, if somebody walks up and says, I want to go to Matticat, they have to take them. I mean, that's part of
Yeah,
it
you
now.
get in line at the stand, and that's the deal.
Right.
I mean, you accept that, I assume.
Yeah, the chicken box, they want to move the people out of there as soon as possible. The police want us to move them out as quickly as possible at closing time. They don't want them wandering around.
So we could pick 75 yards and move on, or something. I'm just trying to get
The
off
odds
this
or
topic.
feet?
Pardon?
75 feet.
This says 200 yards.
That's a long
I thought
way.
75 yards was a
We went from
pretty damn
600
good,
feet
quick
to-
compromise. Anyway, the feeling of the board? Yeah. Yeah, sort of like this, Bobby?
I'd like to add, what's the lowest number the chief's comfortable with?
Maybe 100 yards.
Okay, I'd propose 100 yards.
So-
Just a drastic reduction.
Right, this is a public hearing, you get your chance in a minute. Are you also, so we're likely to go with 100 yards on this one. Next topic, you have another one? I'll let you keep the mic for one more time, and then we'll move around.
I'll be back for public comment later.
All right. Carol Dutton? I see the gentleman back, sorry, we'll get to you next.
I think visually you have to understand, give the club car, how far is 100 yards from the club car?
Straight Wharf. Toby's. The
Okay,
beginning to Straight Wharf is about 100 yards,
okay,
roughly.
So Carol,
From
are
the-
you
from-
suggesting another
from-
number?
From the club car down to the gate on Straight Wharf is probably about 100 yards.
it's a football field.
Yeah, that's 100 yards. Walk that wharf, I'll bet it's close to 100 yards.
Bet not, Bobby, but anyway, I think 100 yards is really a lot.
Okay, so
Think about me.
we got you. It's a lot, Carol, I understand. But we're here to try and move through this tonight. Yes, sir, back there. And got you next.
Tom Walton, I'm a cab owner. I just want to clarify, say I'm driving down Federal Street and it's within whatever this area is going to be. Does that mean that if somebody's just flagging me down that I have to take them? Or does it mean I can't stop and ask them where they're going and then refuse them? If somebody's just...
Airlines.
If I send an email out in the next half hour, I'll have my answers within 15 minutes.
So,
That's how into this.
good. Why don't we, let's make it happen.
Hang on for a second, let me just change this tape.
Makes it 8-0 with 3:53 left in the third period.
A minimum population within the U.S., and the tagging that Solange mentioned is helping that next. And to help answer some of the questions, there is a coalition that's been formed called the North Atlantic SEAL Research Consortium that is a consortium of stakeholders, including non-governmental organizations, universities, state and federal governments, fishing community representatives, and others, to try to help identify some of the things that we don't know, how to prioritize the questions that we most would like to see answered, and how to look for the resources to answer them. Greg Early, who's hiding in the audience back there, is one of the founding members of that, and I have been working on it as well. They have a web page that is probably hard to see here, but in any case, its intent is to try to help disseminate information and facts to the general public from researchers. Next. Dealing with the issue of whether they're a scourge, I want to address some of the charges that are lobbed against them, some of which are in some of the fact sheets that you've gotten the questions answered. That they're devastating water quality near their haulouts, that they're a risk to human health, that they're eating all the fish, they're a vector of cod worms that reduces the quality of fish, and that they may be attracting sharks and repelling tourists. Next. To address the issue of water quality, this is one of the pieces of information that actually is on the website for the SEAL Research Consortium. This is from a study done by Rebecca Gask of Woods Hole Oceanographic, and if you look at it, the dark bars are the samples taken near SEAL haulouts, and the gray bars are the ones away from it, looking at water quality measured in time since 2003. And you can see that the water quality near the haulouts actually hasn't gotten worse, and where it has gotten worse are the ones that are away from the haulouts, which indicates that where we're seeing a decline in water quality, it's probably not the seals doing it. It's runoff from a variety of things, including septic systems. Next. As far as a risk to human health, they certainly, there was an unusual mortality event in 2011 where 160 juvenile harbor seals died in New England. 5 of them were testing positive for a strain of avian flu, which bird flu. As the name implies, it is also vectored by other species besides seals, so the seals are not a sole vector, and we don't know if that's what killed most of them, but they were all young. There was also, just in the paper this last week or so, a scientific paper was published that found swine flu, H1N1, in elephant seals on the West Coast. None of them are symptomatic, they just are carrying it. And that can be vectored into humans, but for neither of these situations was any public health warning issued. It were just folks who handled them were warned to take proper precautions. Next. As to the cause of their contribution to fish declines, everybody knows that Cape Cod was named for the cod, and I actually am a resident of Cape Cod myself. And the problem with cod and a lot of the ground fish is that there's been overfishing. There's a study cited over on the right that was done that looked at the complex ecosystem in which the seals live. They eat fish that we ourselves target, but they eat a lot of things that are not commercially valuable. Solange showed a slide saying that most of their diet is actually sand lance. They're actually competing more with humpback whales than they are us. But in this study, seals did account for 21% of the cod mortality since '93, and this may be contributing to the slow recovery of cod despite decreasing fishing pressure. And studies such as these are actually helping us better understand the interactions between seals and other animals in their environment. We know that in the West Coast, for example, an attempt to save salmon by culling harbor seals actually resulted in crashing the razor clam fishery, because harbor seals actually eat more starry flounder than they do salmon, and once they weren't there to eat the starry flounder, they went crazy and ate all the razor clams and crashed the fishery. Next. As to the vectoring of codworm, again, this is another parasite that can make the quality of the flesh of the fish very soft and not as valuable. It is vectored by, again, a number of different species. The study that's cited here from 2002 said that the relationship between seal abundance and sealworm, they call it in Canada, is complex, and the declines that were created in the seal population by intentional control programs, culls, if you will, did not result in a decrease in the presence of sealworm in the cod. So there are so many other ways that the cod can become infected that controlling the seal population doesn't seem to get rid of it. Next. As for the attracting sharks and repelling tourists, certainly in California, Florida, and Hawaii, there are a lot of sharks and also a lot of tourists and well-publicized attacks from time to time. There was a SEAL forum that happened in Chatham in March, and one of the operators of a Manoa Island ferry said that he only wished that the sharks would turn up earlier because his phone rings off the hook when the sharks are there, because tourists would be horrified if they could go out and if they could only just see a shark, get one. So I think the living dangers mentality is something that people do vicariously. But he also estimated that they take about 20,000 people a year out of Chatham, and that the most common question asked on his trips is, where can I get something to eat? So he estimated that they're bringing up to $1 million a year into Chatham by the seal watching. Next. Now, as for the siren thing, Michael mentioned Children's Beach in La Jolla. That's the picture in the upper part there. It's one of the few beaches in the United States on the West Coast where people can actually go and watch seals give birth to their pups and nurse them, and it attracts huge amounts of people. 80,000 visitors a month go to look at them. So seals are actually very attractive to people if you market your tourism right, and all over the web. If you look at anywhere on the West Coast, they always tell people, go here, go here, go here, because it's an amazing thing. If you look at Chatham and tourism, you'll see any number of websites saying, this is what you have to do. One of them even says, give up shopping and go watch seals. So Nantucket itself can market that. I noticed coming in the ferry, which I've done a number of times, as you come into the harbor, people are leaning at the window taking pictures of two things: the lighthouse when you come in and all the seals on the breakwater. Those are the two things they seem most interested in. So I think there's a siren song to be had if one will listen. Next. And there are some options available for fishermen and property owners who are less than amused by having seals around. As Michael mentioned, they're somewhat limited in law, but they exist. Next. This is a screenshot of the web page for the National Marine Fisheries Service Southwest region, which actually has particular instructions for how to deter harbor seals and California sea lions from property and from fishing gear out there. That's the Southwest region, not the Northeast region, but they're both part of the same agency. Next. They even have lists of things that people are allowed to do there. One presumes that if it was not illegal on the West Coast, it would not be illegal on the East Coast. Although, as Michael said, regulations have not been promulgated, but they specify different types of visual and noise repellents that can be used, and physical contact, including paintball guns, as long as it's non-toxic and water-soluble. You just simply can't hurt them. And if you're a fisherman, you have to be actively engaged in fishing while you're doing it. And if you're a property owner, you have to actually be the owner of the property, or you have to be a government official. Next. In the meantime, we do need to know more. I agree that you can't do research ad infinitum, but as a former researcher, I believe in facts, and I think that taking action without proper facts to back you up is ill-advised. If you don't know where they are and how many they are, then it's hard to know what you can do about them. And it'd be foolish to take action to solve a problem if it actually won't. For example, if I told my neighbor to just get rid of those 4 squirrels and the bird feeder, the problem would end. It would be foolish advice. The public has repeatedly demonstrated their support for protection of seals. That is a sea lion. You might have noticed the ears. And I put it there because, not because I don't know what a seal looks like, but because we've just had a huge amount of press about sea lion pups starving to death on the West Coast. And the public responded by sending in hundreds of thousands of dollars. It's gone into stranding centers to try to help save them. Tens of thousands of staff hours have gone into doing it. Whenever there's a news story in the Cape Cod Times about seals being shot, letters get sent in, people are outraged. I think there's a lot of support out there for these animals that can be mobilized. And attempts to undermine it, as Michael said, would certainly draw the attention of environmental NGOs, including my own organization. And that's it.
Okay, thank you very much. I have a ton of great questions here, so I'm going to get to as many of them as I can. I'm going to switch back and forth between questions, trying to give as much time and opportunity to the most number of questioners. The first one is, who owns the fish? I think this is a good question, and I don't actually own the answer. I don't know, Michael. That's a very good, it sounds facetious, but that's actually a very good legal, philosophical, environmental, ecological question. And do you believe in God while you're at it? I don't even know if this is answerable, but it's a good question.
Yeah, I mean, it's in effect, I think for the fish that we're talking about, we're talking about marine species, they're a public resource. We all effectively own the fish if we're talking about a catch in the territorial sea, or even beyond that, I think in the EEZ, in the exclusive economic zone, which goes out a further 188 nautical miles beyond the territorial sea. And with that kind of public ownership comes public management and public responsibility. There is regulation of fishing activity under numerous laws, Magnuson-Stevens Act, MMPA, state laws as well, if we're talking about state waters. And the ultimate aim is not only to support the fishing industry, but also to ensure that fish stocks are sustainable. I mean, I'm not telling you anything that you don't already know, but just philosophically, I think when we're thinking about fish, we have to think of them in a public perspective, not a private one, because I think that ultimately leads to disaster, not only for fish but for fisheries.
Mm-hmm. That kind of, Solange, you have a...
Yes, you were talking about am I on? The philosophical aspect. So I think maybe part of that question was who owns the fish? Is it ours, or is it the ecosystem in which they function? And so from that perspective, I don't know that it's ours more than it is any other top predator in the system. So this is a very difficult sort of question to because it's not mine or yours, but it's at ours as long as as much as we are functioning members of the ecosystem. And I think that would be my perspective. What is the contribution and the effect of human take in the ecosystem?
Thank you. There's a lot of questions that kind of address this area of how fishing stocks are relative to seal populations, how that relates specifically to fisheries. A lot of fishermen feel a lot of frustration because their catching limits are reduced each year. And I have at least 2, maybe 3 questions. I'm going to try to condense them into one. But one question says, the inshore areas where the seals are also the spawning and nursing areas for many fish species. If the seal populations continue to increase, how does NOAA expect fish populations to rebound with the pressure from seal presence? I don't know.
Let's see.
Do they weigh these type of, does NOAA, when they get together, maybe Sharon, are you on these committees, do they say, well, we're worried about this and this and this? How do they address these competing claims?
Well, I mean, certainly, if it can be found that they're having an impact on an area that's a spawning area, the government can actively harass them out of it. I mean, that is an option under Section 109. They can government officials can take responsibility to harass them away from protected fish species and habitats if they need to. In the Columbia River, for example, they're harassing the bejesus out of the California sea lions, getting them away from a fish ladder where the endangered salmon are spawning. So if it can be shown that they are, in fact, in an area that is key to the survival of and recovery of fish stock, the government itself can harass them.
Sarah, am I interrupting just for a brief?
By all means.
I went up the Columbia River in the 1950s on a naval vessel, and somebody pointed out the sea lions that were eating the steelhead trout and the salmon, the endangered salmon. Point being, that was over 50 years ago. That litigation, as I understand it, you know more, has been going back and forth for these many years. Injunctions, new orders, and back and forth and back and forth. So I'm always a little skeptical. Somebody wrote a letter to the editor not too long ago saying, "You dummies in the Seal Abatement Coalition, why don't you read the Act? There's provision in the Act for all these exceptions. So what are you railing about seeking amendments to the Act when there's provision already in the Act?" And my rejoinder is, yeah, look at the Bonneville Dam and that situation with the sea lions and the steelhead and salmon. Look at La Jolla and Children's Beach. That litigation has been going on as long as I can remember.
Well, there's litigation over the salmon that's been going on with the fishery management plan since then, when most of those stocks weren't listed until the 80s, but the litigation over the recovery plans on the salmon has been going on since then, but those are fishing groups litigating the management plans. My organization's been involved in the Section 120 approval to kill sea lions at the dam, starting in 2010. I'm on that task force also. But they've been harassing them with seal bombs and acoustic harassment devices at 210 decibels and so forth in the Columbia, in the Willamette, in the Rogue. They do that all over the place.
To what effect?
Well, the sea lions are taking less than 1% of the salmon a year, and they permit the fisheries to take up to 17% per year. And the salmon stocks in their latest reports to Congress are all of the stocks subject to predation are listed as stable or increasing. And they've had record runs in the last, not this year, but the prior 3 years. And the predation rate of sea lions the last 2 years has been less than 1%, when fisheries have taken a minimum of 12% per year. So, and they also are intentionally managing bass and walleye to stay in that river for recreational fishermen when they are non-indigenous species that were introduced to the river and are estimated to eat over.
We're getting off topic now.
Yeah. But I mean, so the sea lions are not the big problem there, is my bottom line answer. Sorry.
That's right. We just have a lot of questions and 12 minutes to ask. And I understand exactly what you're trying to get across. That's helpful. One question here is, does ocean temperature play into this whole question as far as fisheries, seals? And while I'm asking that, has there ever been any epidemics that have drastically reduced the gray seal population, or any foreseen, I would assume?
There have been epidemics in the Baltic Sea for gray seals, and so there have been a couple of populations that, I'm trying to remember if in the 90s, I think it was during the 90s, that were quite reduced by an epidemic. So these populations, when they get a high density, can be prone to diseases. On the other hand, the gray seals are called ice seals because in some parts of their range they actually pup on ice, and so that reduces the possibility of diseases or parasites being just a temperature issue, being just transferred. As part as you're talking about the change in water temperature, and in the Gulf of St. Lawrence, the growth rate, it was a growth rate of about 5%. It's actually gone into a decline in the recent years, and part of the reason is that the ice formation has been actually quite poor in the last several years, possible global change here, and there has been very poor pupping because basically the ice breaks up and there's no possibility, or a lot of pups die. So there is that interaction here with the changes in ecosystem. I don't know if that answers some of your questions.
Nope, that was very helpful. Got a question from someone. They were asking about whether you felt like you were having any success in Washington, D.C. as far as lobbying for interaction changes with the Marine Mammal Protection Act amendments, which I think is a good and fair question. Are you getting anywhere? And if you are, could you be specific?
I'll be interested to hear Peter's response to that. Are we, Peter?
Our effort in Washington has been focused principally on getting NOAA to live up to its responsibilities in providing an accurate census of the gray seal population here, and to take a serious interest in the economic and environmental impact of the population that does exist. Because the seal counts we've got from NOAA are not really current, and when they're current, they seem to have simply reiterated the census of 2 years before, and they don't seem to be able to count the seals that are in the water. They're limited to counting those that they can spot on land. But one would think a country that was capable of sending a man to the moon would be able to figure out a way to count the seals that are in the water. So we have been focusing on that and basically organizing a full court press on NOAA to get the census in our hands, because we want to go just the way Sharon advises. That is, we want to be led by the facts. We don't want to get ahead of ourselves. We don't want to fire and then aim. And NOAA has a real responsibility here, we feel, and that's been our focus. As more facts are gathered, we will then decide on next steps in terms of Washington legislative strategy. But we've got to get our ducks in a row. And this is one of the reasons we established the research, the Gray Seal Research Fund, one of the reasons we're in touch with Woods Hole Oceanographic Institute. We want to really fund and mount a research agenda here that will point the way to an effective future course for the SAC. That would be my answer.
Good, thank you very much. I've got a couple of other, I've got several questions here. We could be here all night, but let me try to ask a couple quickly. One question specifically, what time of year were scat studies done, and how is the increasing seal population affecting lobster numbers? Those have been questions that are often asked in the past, which are, we don't have all the answers with us, but.
The study from Christina Impella, if I recall, and maybe someone else in the audience can help me with this, was done on very different throughout the year. And so there's the data that I have that I showed are just a compound of a number of study sites as well as months. So it's really a snapshot of what the diet is. Lobster, I don't recall seeing lobsters as part of that diet, so I might be wrong though.
I don't recall ever seeing it as part of that
that's
diet.
Right.
When my uncle here was shooting and eating seals in Maine, they would find lobsters in their stomachs.
Yeah, there's in Canada. It's interesting. There's a whole other issue that has to do with a recovery of cod and with the interaction between seals and cod, and that's another side issue for us. But lobster may be a possibility. Again, the problem with the scat study is that we can tell only what's been eaten by individuals, in the previous 24 hours. And so we don't have it doesn't give a good record. Also, many types of prey won't show up, won't actually leave traces in the scats. So even if they were to eat other things than fish or some shellfish, it would actually not even register in the scats. So it is a very it's a very difficult method. It's quite a flawed method from that perspective.
Okay, I'm going to go on to the next couple of questions. Please comment on risk to human swimmers and surfers from large number of seals along the beaches. We don't have Greg Scommel here, but I know we mentioned it. I have seen the reports, too, on the Massachusetts Department of Public Health that showed all of the different haul-out sites and water quality issues, which I think are a non-issue. But on either side, I'll give you guys a moment to comment on what kind of concerns you have for a risk to human swimmers and surfers.
Well, I have a friend, John Lancaster, who was surfing off the South Shore early last summer and saw a seal float by with his head cut clear off. It said it did give him pause. And I think we'd like to hear from the leader of the surfer community here on the island, but I can tell you that the greatest generator of signatures on our petition here on the island has been at Force 5, which is a chandlery for the surfers. And of course, we did observe, well, Big Kenny Casson observed it in person last summer along the East Beach out in the Galls when that great white attacked a seal that then hauled out, mortally wounded on the beach. That attack took place just 12 feet offshore, according to Big Kenny. At any rate, I know quite a number of my friends who are actually loath to go in the water with seals. And as a matter of fact, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service advises you not to go in the water with seals. So I venture that the intimidation factor is very real for beachgoers, swimmers, and surfers.
Okay, thank you. Going to, did you guys have any quick comments on that, or should I read another question or two? Okay, I don't think we're going to get to all of them, but we're going to get to most of them. This is actually directed to you, Michael. You suggest in your presentation that Section 117 of the Marine Mammal Protection Act provides unparalleled data stock assessment. My question is, do you believe NOAA has actually done the reports required by the Act? If you read the reports, there have been no change in the reports in the last 7+ years. In fact, the opening 3 paragraphs have not changed since 2006. And right now they're saying current and maximum net productivity rates are unknown for this stock. And some of this is lag time with the government, but I'm assuming there's a couple of other.
Yeah, there is lag time with the Sharon knows this better than anyone here, but there is lag time in the scientific review group's review of available data. I think the point I was trying to make was that the MMPA's ability to generate good survey data and incorporate it within stock assessments, which generate abundance numbers, population trends, and so forth, is unparalleled in the sense that it is better than any other jurisdiction anywhere on the planet, I think. But that by no means suggests that it is perfect. Where a lot of the survey money goes in our present age of austerity, in particular, is for endangered species, depleted marine mammal species. And there are some species that are really lagging behind in data acquisition, and gray seals certainly seem to be one of them.
That makes me think of something. I mean, you guys have been trying to find solutions to the population numbers. I mean, perhaps working together, they can provide you with some folks to lobby about that can do something about getting some of these more recent and updated numbers. I know it's harder to do it aerially, but it can be done. So working together, I think they can provide the right people to talk to that might get something done.
Yeah, this is very helpful, Sarah.
Yeah. All righty. Well, I have a couple of other questions here, but we are already at 6 o'clock, and we wanted to have some time for everyone to talk amongst yourselves. We've got food, we've got lots of folks here in the room, and we wanted everyone to have a chance to spend some time actually talking to each other about these issues. Most of the rest of the questions I have, I can try to put them online. They're basically talking about the optimum population and how that affects commercial fisheries, and how do you balance those two needs of, what the number of seals in the water and how commercial fisheries, and especially ground fishing, has been affected and impacted so greatly. So I'll leave that as the last question. Perhaps if you have any advice or ideas on how to balance this and what kind of ways we can help the ground fisheries and some of our fishermen.
Yes. Do you have my presentation, my last slide, addresses this, the one that wasn't shown.
Oh.
So it's about it's the issue of culling of gray seals in Canada to try to address the issue of recovery of cod. So people agree in Canada that over there the cod population was reduced because of overfishing, but the recovery is Fisheries and Oceans Canada scientists have have a sense that and have some data that suggests that there is an effect of gray seals on potential recovery of cod. Now, it's what the paper I'm citing here, and it's on the website, the Department of Fisheries and Oceans. It's a paper where they explore scenarios of gray seal culls to allow recovery of cod. Now, the problem is there's a number of very large uncertainties as to how much cod seals eat. Is it a specialized diet, certain individuals or not? So depending on the scenario, the idea, the sense that the cod population could actually rebound due to a cull could would require a cull ranging from 0 to 31,000 gray seals killed in a first step, and then to follow the population increase afterwards, it would require 1,700 more kills annually. So that's for the area in the Scotian Shelf. And so as of now, there is no planned cull in Canada for that region.
But, Solange, do you suppose the gray seals have just sensed this might be a possibility, and that's why they're heading down here? Hmm?
That actually leads to a question.
Going out. Okay, time to go.
Time to go.
Time to go.
Well, thank you, everyone.
Say,
Please,
Sarah, excuse me, I just, without billing, but I'm in terms of trying to draw a bottom line under this forum,
Mm-hmm.
I just wonder whether we have any sort of agreement or consensus among us that at least some of the questions we have posed are valid and make sense, and that perhaps some research is indeed warranted and would be beneficial, especially considering the unique geography we have here on Nantucket in the context of the gray seal presence. And I'm assuming that the North Atlantic Seal Consortium, is it? Research Consortium is also interested in further research. And so the question may be redundant and may be obvious, I don't know. But I didn't get a sense, because our purpose in really hoping to have this forum was to at least try to raise questions and see if there is agreement that the questions make sense.
I think there is. What do you all think? Yes, go ahead, Michael.
I thought a lot of the questions that you were posing are interesting ones. It wasn't clear to me which ones were really most effective in getting to the management solutions. I think optimally what you want regulatorily is a rule or a regulation from the National Marine Fisheries Service that indicates which forms of deterrence are permissible. And you want research that indicates for your particular fishery, this particular species, this particular region, it's I think, it's an extremely specific question that has to be asked. What forms of management, including deterrence, are going to be the most effective and responsible? That is really where I think the research effort ought to go in support of the management decisions and in support of a regulation on deterrence. I mentioned, just one last thought on this, I mentioned earlier that NIMS had come out with a proposed rule for deterrence. That was back in 1995, I think. It was a long time ago. And there's a reason why there wasn't a final one issued. And I think that reason, in large part, had to do with the fact that they bit enough more than they could chew. They were trying to come up with a general rule where they really needed to look at specific fisheries and specific species. I think if you were to try to focus on research to enable that regulation in this particular area,
Unique circumstances.
you may be able to get somewhere. And again, that's within the confines of the existing law without seeking legislative amendment.
Thank you.
I want to thank everyone for coming today. The Civic League is going to continue meeting throughout the summertime. We're going to have more forums in the fall. If you think that we should, approach this again later on this fall after we've had some information from both parties, that would be great. I want to thank both Geno TV and Nantucket Community Television for being here. This will be streaming online, and I can talk to all the speakers on both sides to provide their information for the Civic League to put it online. So you can view this on demand on Geno TV and on Nantucket Community Television, which are both available online. And I'd like to thank everyone for coming, and it's great to see such a nice big crowd, and hope to see you again. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Do we all get up and smile and shake hands like they do on the political
But we
debates?
need it, yeah. It's not like it's the Republicans and Democrats in Congress.